I'm Jessica Wells, 32, and I just discovered my entire family has been lying to me for 20 years. What started as a cancelled birthday dinner snowballed into uncovering that my parents had been secretly funding my younger sister's lavish lifestyle while telling me they were struggling financially. Now I'm sitting in my office with evidence that will change everything, and my assistant just called me boss in front of the people who betrayed me. Hey there, YouTube family. Before I dive deeper into how my world turned upside down, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below. If family drama stories like mine resonate with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to join our community. Now, let's get into how I discovered my family's web of lies and the sweet karma that followed. Growing up in suburban Boston, the Wells family looked perfect from the outside. My parents, Richard and Diana Wells, were respected community members. Dad was a successful accountant, and Mom ran a small but popular local bakery. My sister Amber was 3 years younger, the golden child with her blonde curls and charismatic personality that drew everyone to her. Then there was me, Jessica, studious, responsible, and always trying to make my parents proud. Our childhood photos showed smiling faces at barbecues, holiday gatherings, and family vacations, but beneath that carefully constructed image lay an unsettling truth I wouldn't discover until decades later. While I received praise for good grades and responsibility, Amber received praise simply for existing. When I brought home straight A's, my parents would nod approvingly. When Amber brought home C's, they'd celebrate her trying her best with ice cream and gifts. I convinced myself this dynamic was normal. After all, Amber was younger and needed more support. I embraced my role as the responsible one, the daughter who would help with household chores without being asked, who would babysit Amber when my parents needed a night out, who would later help Amber with her homework and college applications. I believed that my contributions to the family were valued, even if they weren't celebrated as loudly. After high school, I worked multiple jobs to put myself through college, eventually earning a business degree with honors. My parents attended my graduation but left early because Amber had a dance recital. I swallowed my disappointment and focused on building my career, determined to create financial stability for myself. Over the next decade, I climbed the corporate ladder at a marketing firm, eventually becoming one of the youngest executives in the company's history. My hard work paid off with a corner office, a comfortable salary, and a team of talented professionals who respected me. Meanwhile, Amber bounced between college majors, taking 6 years to complete a 4-year degree, with our parents covering her tuition and apartment. Every time I visited home, I'd hear about how tight money was and how my parents were barely making ends meet. I started helping them financially, covering their property taxes 1 year, paying for a new roof the next, and sending monthly contributions for their retirement fund. When they mentioned they might need to downsize their home, I increased my financial support even more, cutting back on my own expenses to help them maintain their lifestyle. Throughout all this, Amber seemed to live a charmed life. Her social media was filled with photos from exotic vacations, designer clothes, and brunches at expensive restaurants. When I asked how she afforded it all with her part-time job at a boutique, she'd vaguely mention good budgeting or credit card points. I never pressed further, not wanting to seem jealous or petty. My romantic relationships suffered as well. I dated sporadically but always put my career and family obligations first. My last serious boyfriend, David, broke things off after 2 years, telling me I was too unavailable and always putting everyone else's needs before our relationship. The breakup hurt, but I buried myself in work and continued the pattern of prioritizing others. For my upcoming 32nd birthday, I decided it was time to create some positive family memories. I made reservations at an upscale restaurant in Boston, excited to treat my parents and Amber to a special evening. I hadn't celebrated my birthday with them in years, always settling for a quick phone call as they were inevitably busy with something related to Amber's life. This year would be different, I'd make sure of it. I sent the invitations a month in advance, confirming with everyone multiple times. My parents seemed genuinely excited, telling me they were looking forward to celebrating their successful daughter. Amber promised to drive up from New York, where she had recently moved for a job opportunity that remained mysteriously vague whenever I asked for details. Little did I know that this birthday dinner, or rather, its cancellation, would be the thread that would unravel 20 years of family secrets and set in motion a chain of events that would change all our lives forever. The day before my birthday, I was finalizing a major marketing campaign proposal when my phone rang. Seeing my mother's name on the screen, I smiled, expecting last-minute details about our dinner plans. Instead, her voice carried that particular tone I'd grown to recognize over the years, the one she used when Amber needed something. "Jessica, honey, I'm so sorry to do this, but we need to cancel dinner tomorrow," she said, her voice laced with practiced regret. "Something's come up with Amber." I gripped my pen tighter. "What happened? Is she okay?" "She's fine, but she has this amazing opportunity to go to Europe with her photography group. It's last minute, and she needs help with the deposit by tomorrow. Your father and I are driving to New York tonight to help her get everything sorted." The familiar sting of disappointment spread through my chest. "Mom, we've had these dinner plans for a month. Can't she figure out the deposit on her own? It's just one evening. You know how important this is for her career, Jess. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We can celebrate your birthday when we get back. You understand, right? You've always been our responsible one." There it was, the familiar refrain that simultaneously praised me and dismissed my needs. I was the responsible one, which somehow translated to the one whose feelings and plans could be sacrificed. "Sure, Mom. I understand," I replied automatically, the words bitter on my tongue. "How much is this deposit anyway?" There was a pause. "About $5,000. Her group got a special rate, but they need the money tomorrow." I nearly dropped my phone. $5,000? I thought you and Dad were struggling financially. Isn't that why I've been helping with your bills? Well, yes, but this is different. This is for Amber's future. We're just moving some money around." She lowered her voice. "We've been saving a little emergency fund. Don't tell your father I mentioned it." After hanging up, I sat at my desk, a strange numbness spreading through me. Something wasn't adding up. If my parents had an emergency fund large enough to casually withdraw $5,000 for a last-minute trip, why had I been paying their property taxes and home repairs for years? Why the constant refrain about financial struggles? On an impulse, I opened my laptop and logged into my personal email. I searched for financial and began scrolling through years of correspondence with my parents. There were dozens of emails, requests for help with medical bills, home repairs, car payments, even monthly living expenses. Over the past 5 years, I had sent them over $70,000. I printed the emails and financial transfers, my hands shaking. Then I called my assistant, Megan, who had been with me for 3 years and had become something of a confidant. "Megan, I need a favor. Can you look up something for me?" "Of course, Ms. Wells. What do you need?" "I need you to find any public records of property or assets owned by Richard and Diana Wells in Massachusetts. And if you can, look into any major purchases or travel they've made in the last 5 years." Megan didn't ask questions, one of the many reasons I valued her. "I'll have that for you by morning." That night, I canceled my reservation at the restaurant and ordered takeout to my apartment. As I ate alone on my birthday eve, I scrolled through Amber's Instagram. Her latest post showed her shopping at a high-end boutique in Manhattan, captioned, "Treating myself before the big European adventure. #blessed #living my best life." The timestamp was from that afternoon. Around the same time my mother was telling me they needed to help Amber with her last-minute trip deposit. I kept scrolling back through Amber's posts from the past year, a weekend in Miami, skiing in Aspen, a music festival in California, brunches at exclusive restaurants, and shopping sprees featuring designer bags that cost more than a month of my mortgage payments. All while our parents supposedly struggled to make ends meet. Sleep eluded me that night as questions circled in my mind. Had I been manipulated all these years? Had my financial support for my parents actually been indirectly funding Amber's lifestyle? And perhaps most painfully, had they ever truly valued me, or was I just a convenient resource to exploit? Morning couldn't come fast enough, and with it, Megan's findings would begin to unravel the truth behind 20 years of family dynamics that suddenly felt more like a carefully orchestrated deception than the loving relationship I had always believed in. When I arrived at the office the next morning, my actual birthday, a folder was waiting on my desk with Megan's neat handwriting, information requested. I closed my office door, took a deep breath, and opened it. What I found inside shattered any remaining illusions I had about my family. My parents, far from struggling financially, owned their primary residence outright, with no mortgage. They also owned a vacation property on Cape Cod purchased 3 years ago, right around the time I had given them $20,000 for what they claimed were medical expenses not covered by insurance. Bank records showed consistent transfers to Amber's account, approximately $4,000 monthly for the past 5 years. There were payments for her apartment in New York, $3,200 per month for a luxury building in Soho, her car lease, $700 monthly for a BMW, and credit card payments averaging $2,500 monthly. All while I believed they could barely afford groceries. Most shocking was a trust fund established for Amber when she was born, currently valued at over $300,000, with no equivalent for me. My hands trembled as I flipped through printouts of flight records showing my parents had visited Amber in New York 14 times in the past year, with side trips to Miami, Los Angeles, and even Paris. They had never once visited me in Boston, always claiming they couldn't afford the trip. As the evidence mounted, my shock gave way to a cold, calculated anger. Every sacrifice I had made, every extra hour I had worked to send them money, every vacation I had skipped to help with their emergencies, it had all been a lie. I hadn't been helping my struggling parents, I had been unwittingly funding my sister's lavish lifestyle and my parents' secret vacations. I called Megan into my office. I need to take the rest of the day off. Please reschedule my meetings. Her eyes moved from my face to the open folder. Ms. Wells, Jessica, are you okay? No, I admitted. But I will be. I need to make a few stops before I confront my family. Megan nodded, her expression concerned but professional. Is there anything else I can do? Actually, yes. Can you call Robert Chen at the Boston Globe? Tell him I might have an interesting human interest story for him. And book me on a train to New York this afternoon. Before leaving, I stopped by the office of our legal counsel, Sarah Martinez. I'd worked with Sarah on numerous company matters and trusted her judgment. I need personal legal advice, I explained, sliding the folder across her desk. I've been defrauded by my family for years. What are my options? Sarah reviewed the documents, her expression growing increasingly troubled. Jessica, this is textbook financial exploitation. You have clear evidence that your parents solicited money under false pretenses. You could easily pursue legal action and would likely win. What would that look like? A civil suit to recover the fraudulently obtained funds, plus damages. Given the amount and duration, it could be substantial. I nodded, processing this information. And if I wanted to handle this without the courts? Sarah leaned back in her chair. You have considerable leverage here. The evidence is damning, and I imagine they wouldn't want this becoming public knowledge. On the train to New York, I reviewed my plan. According to Amber's Instagram, my family would be at her apartment for a pre-trip celebration that evening. The irony wasn't lost on me. They were celebrating her trip on my birthday, using money that should have been in their struggling bank account. I had always been the peacemaker, the one who smoothed things over, who never rocked the boat. That version of Jessica Wells died the moment I saw those bank statements. In her place was a woman who finally understood her worth and was ready to claim it. As the train sped toward New York, I made a series of calls, to my bank, to a private investigator to verify additional details, and finally to Megan with specific instructions for tomorrow. Each call was another piece falling into place for what would happen next. My whole life, I had been playing by rules my family had established, rules designed to keep me in my place while elevating Amber. I had been the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who would understand and sacrifice. Today, on my 32nd birthday, I was changing the rules of the game. And my family had no idea what was coming. I stood outside Amber's luxury apartment building in Soho, my heart pounding against my ribs. Through the large lobby windows, I could see a doorman in a crisp uniform checking packages. This wasn't the starter apartment my sister had described, it was the kind of building featured in architectural magazines, with apartments starting well over $1 million. Taking a deep breath, I texted Megan, "I'm here. Initiate plan B in exactly 30 minutes unless you hear otherwise from me." Her response came immediately, "Understood. Everything is ready." I straightened my blazer, checked that the folder of evidence was secure in my bag, and walked through the glass doors. The doorman looked up with a practiced smile. "Good evening. How may I help you?" "I'm here to see Amber Wells in 11B. I'm her sister." He checked his computer. "Your name, please?" "Jessica Wells." His eyebrows raised slightly. "Oh, Ms. Wells. You're expected." He picked up the phone, announced my arrival, then gestured toward the elevator. 11th floor. "They're waiting for you." "They're waiting for me?" That was unexpected. Had they somehow found out I was coming? The elevator ride gave me a moment to center myself. I had rehearsed what I wanted to say, but confronting years of deception wouldn't follow a script. When the doors opened on the 11th floor, I followed the hallway to apartment 11B and knocked. My mother opened the door, her expression a mixture of surprise and something else, guilt, perhaps? "Jessica. What are you doing here?" She was wearing a cocktail dress I'd never seen before, pearls at her throat that looked new and expensive. "Happy birthday to me, right?" I stepped past her into the apartment without waiting for an invitation. The space was stunning, open concept with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline, designer furniture, and what appeared to be original artwork on the walls. In the dining area, my father and Amber sat at a table laden with food and champagne. "Jess?" My father stood, nearly knocking over his chair. "What are you doing in New York?" "I decided to join the celebration," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "Since you all canceled my birthday dinner to be here, I thought I'd come to you instead." Amber had the grace to look embarrassed. "We were going to call you later, Jess. It's just that this trip came up suddenly, and—" "Save it," I interrupted, pulling out my phone and scrolling to her Instagram. "You've been planning this trip for at least 3 months. Here's your post from February, can't wait for my European adventure in May. #countdown begins." The color drained from her face. My father stepped forward, his business persona taking over. "Jessica, this is inappropriate. We can discuss this as a family another time. We're discussing it now." I opened my bag and removed the folder. "I've been helping you financially for years because you claim to be struggling. Yet somehow you can afford a vacation home on Cape Cod, monthly payments to Amber totaling over $7,000, and international vacations." My mother sank onto the sofa. "How did you find out?" "I did what I do best, my due diligence. Every email where you asked for money, every bank transfer, every property record, it's all here." I spread the documents on Amber's glass coffee table. You've been lying to me for years, using me as an ATM while funding Amber's lifestyle. My father's face hardened. You have no right to investigate us like this. We're your parents. And that gave you the right to defraud me of over $70,000? To make me believe you were in financial distress while secretly maintaining a trust fund for Amber that's worth hundreds of thousands? Amber gasped. They told you about my trust fund? I turned to her. They didn't tell me anything. I found out on my own. Just like I found out about this apartment that they're paying for, your car lease, your credit cards, and all those trips you've been taking. For the first time, I saw something like shame cross her face. Jess, My phone rang, interrupting whatever excuse she was about to offer. The caller ID showed it was Megan. 28 minutes had passed, she was calling 2 minutes early. I need to take this, I said, stepping away from my stunned family. Hello? MS. Wells, Megan's voice was clear and professional, loud enough that my family could hear. I have Robert Chen from the Boston Globe on the other line. He's very interested in your story about family financial exploitation and is asking when you can meet. Also, Ms. Martinez has prepared the legal documents you requested and says they're ready to file first thing tomorrow. I looked directly at my father as I responded. Thank you, Megan. Tell Mr. Chen I'll call him back within the hour. And please thank Ms. Martinez for her quick work on those documents. The blood drained from my father's face. He knew exactly what legal documents meant, and the mention of the Boston Globe had him visibly shaken. You wouldn't, he whispered. Wouldn't I? You spent years underestimating me, Dad. That stops today. My mother stood, her hands trembling. Jessica, please. We can work this out as a family. There's no need to involve lawyers or newspapers. You stopped treating me like family years ago. I was just a resource to you, a way to fund Amber's lifestyle while maintaining your own. You canceled my birthday dinner, the first one we would have had together in 5 years, to give her money for a trip she's been planning for months. Amber stepped forward, tears in her eyes. I didn't know, Jess. I swear I didn't know they were taking money from you to give to me. I turned to her, my anger momentarily redirected. You didn't question how our supposedly struggling parents could afford your Soho apartment, your BMW, your designer wardrobe? You just accepted it all without wondering where the money was coming from? She flinched as if I'd slapped her. I thought they had savings. Dad always said his investments were doing well, while telling me they could barely make their property tax payments. I shook my head in disgust. I've been working 60-hour weeks, sacrificing my own needs, relationships, and financial security to help them, to help you. All while you were living it up on my dime. Whoever you are watching this, I know this confrontation is intense, and I can see many of you might be dealing with similar family betrayals. This is where everything changed for me, standing in that luxury apartment facing the people who had manipulated me for years. If you're going through something similar, stay tuned because what happened next completely transformed my approach to family relationships. Drop a comment if you've ever had to confront toxic family dynamics. Your experiences matter to our community. Now, let me tell you how the showdown continued. My father recovered his composure, switching tactics. His voice softened as he tried the approach that had always worked before. Jessie, sweetheart, I know this looks bad, but we've always had your best interests at heart. You're so capable, so independent. Amber needed more support than you did. Support is one thing. Systematic deception is another. I gathered the documents back into my folder. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to repay every cent you took from me under false pretenses, with interest. You're going to sign a legally binding agreement admitting to what you've done. And you're going to explain to Amber that her free ride is over. And if we refuse? My father's voice had an edge I'd never heard before. Then I file the lawsuit tomorrow, and I give an exclusive interview to the Boston Globe about how Richard Wells, respected accountant and community leader, defrauded his own daughter for years. How do you think your clients would react to that? Were your friends at the country club? The mention of his reputation, the thing he valued above all else, hit home. He sank into a chair, suddenly looking older than his 60 years. "What do you want?" he asked quietly. "Everything I just said, plus one more thing." I paused, making sure I had everyone's attention. "I want the truth. I want to know why. Why was Amber always the priority? Why did you decide I was worth less than she was?" The silence that followed was deafening. My mother and father exchanged glances, some unspoken communication passing between them. Finally, my mother spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "You were always so capable, Jessica. From the time you were a little girl, you figured things out on your own. You didn't seem to need us the way Amber did. So you punished me for being self-sufficient? You exploited my independence?" My father sighed heavily. "We didn't see it that way. Amber struggled with everything: school, making friends, finding her path. You always knew exactly what you wanted and how to get it. We thought you'd be fine no matter what. And that justified lying to me? Using me?" No one had an answer for that. My phone buzzed with a text from Megan. 30 minutes have passed. Proceeding with Plan B unless instructed otherwise. I texted back, hold for 10 more minutes. Looking up at my family, I made my final decision. I'm giving you one chance to make this right. One chance to salvage any kind of relationship with me. Otherwise, I walk out that door, file the lawsuit, and you never hear from me again except through my lawyers. For the first time in my life, I saw genuine fear in my father's eyes. Not concern, not disappointment, fear. He was afraid of me, of what I could do, of the power I suddenly held. And in that moment, I realized something profound: I had always had this power. I had just never been willing to use it before. The next 48 hours were a whirlwind of legal meetings, financial discussions, and painful revelations. My father, terrified of both the lawsuit and the public exposure, agreed to my terms with surprising speed. Sarah Martinez, my company's legal counsel who was now representing me personally, drew up a settlement agreement that required my parents to repay the full $70,000 plus interest, acknowledge their deception in writing, and commit to financial transparency going forward. When my father tried to negotiate a payment plan, claiming they didn't have liquid assets available, Sarah coolly suggested that perhaps they could sell the Cape Cod property or liquidate some of Amber's trust fund. The documents were signed the next day, with my parents agreeing to wire the full amount within 30 days. As we sat in Sarah's office after the signing, my father looked deflated, a shadow of the authoritative figure I'd grown up fearing to disappoint. "I hope someday you can forgive us, Jessica. We never meant to hurt you." "Intentions don't erase consequences," I replied, gathering my copy of the agreement. "You had 20 years to treat me fairly, to be honest with me. You chose not to." My mother, who had been mostly silent throughout the legal proceedings, finally spoke up. "What happens now? With our family?" It was a question I had been asking myself since the confrontation in Amber's apartment. What did I want my relationship with them to look like going forward? Could there even be a relationship after such a profound breach of trust? "I don't know," I answered honestly. "That depends on whether you can see me, really see me, for who I am, not just what I can do for you." Back at my hotel that evening, I received a text from Amber. "Can we talk? Just us?" I agreed to meet her for coffee the next morning before my train back to Boston. I chose a quiet cafe near my hotel, arriving early to secure a corner table away from other patrons. Amber arrived looking nothing like her polished Instagram persona. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, her face free of makeup, wearing jeans and a plain sweater instead of her usual designer outfits. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, sliding into the chair across from me. "I didn't think you would." "I almost didn't," I admitted. "But we need to clear the air." She nodded, wrapping her hands around her coffee mug. "I've been thinking about what you said, about not questioning where the money was coming from. You're right. I should have known something wasn't adding up. I got used to them solving all my problems. While I was solving theirs," I added. "Yes." She looked down. "I didn't know they were taking money from you, Jess." "I swear I didn't. But I should have asked more questions. I should have wondered how they could afford everything they were giving me." It was the closest thing to accountability I'd heard from any family member. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because you deserve the truth. And because I'm ashamed." She took a deep breath. "After you left, Dad said I needed to grow up and stand on my own 2 feet. The Europe trip is cancelled. They're cutting me off financially except for helping with health insurance until I find a job with benefits." I raised an eyebrow. "And how do you feel about that?" "Terrified," she admitted with surprising candor. "I don't know how to live without their safety net. I don't have your drive or your skills. I spent 6 years getting a degree I don't use, and my resume is basically a blank page." For the first time, I felt a flicker of sympathy for my sister. She had been as much a product of our parents' dysfunctional approach as I had been, just on the opposite end of the spectrum. "You're not incapable, Amber. You've just never had to be capable before. There's a difference." She looked up, surprise crossing her features. "You don't hate me?" "I'm angry at the situation. At the lies. At the years of manipulation. But hate?" I shook my head. "No, I don't hate you. You're as much a victim of their dysfunction as I am, just in a different way." "What do you mean?" "They made me believe my only value was in what I could provide, in being responsible and self-sufficient. They made you believe you couldn't survive without them." Both messages were harmful in their own way. Amber was quiet for a long moment, absorbing this perspective. "I never thought about it like that." "Neither did I, until recently." I sipped my coffee, considering my next words carefully. "I can help you, you know." She looked up sharply. "Help me? Why would you do that after everything that's happened?" "Not financially," I clarified. "But I can help you build a resume, practice interviewing, figure out what you're actually good at and interested in. I manage a team of 20 people, I know how to develop talent." "Why would you do that for me?" "Because unlike our parents, I don't think helping someone means keeping them dependent. Real help means giving people the tools to help themselves." Tears welled in her eyes. "I've been a terrible sister to you. You've been the sister they raised you to be. We both have the chance to decide who we want to be going forward." As our conversation continued, I began to see glimpses of a person I'd never really known, a sister who had talents and interests that had been overshadowed by our parents' differential treatment. Amber was creative, personable, and more insightful than I'd given her credit for. She had just never had the opportunity or motivation to develop those qualities into marketable skills. Before we parted, she asked, "Will you ever forgive them? Mom and Dad?" I considered the question carefully. Forgiveness isn't something I can promise right now. Trust is earned through actions, not words or legal agreements. If they want a relationship with me, they'll need to demonstrate that they see and value me for who I am, not what I can do for them. And me? Can you forgive me? I think we have the chance to build something new, Amber. Not based on the roles we were assigned as children, but on who we choose to be as adults. I'd like to try, if you would." For the first time in our adult lives, we hugged without the undercurrent of competition or resentment that had always colored our interactions. It wasn't forgiveness, exactly, but it was a beginning. On the train back to Boston, I reflected on the whirlwind of events that had been set in motion by a cancelled birthday dinner. In less than a week, I had confronted decades of family dysfunction, reclaimed my financial autonomy, and begun to redefine my relationships on my own terms. But the most significant change wasn't in my family dynamics, it was in me. I had advocated for myself with a conviction I'd never known I possessed. I had demanded respect rather than trying to earn it through sacrifice and compliance. And in doing so, I had discovered a sense of personal power that would change how I navigated every relationship going forward. When I returned to the office the following Monday, something had fundamentally shifted. The team noticed it immediately. There was a new confidence in my stride, a directness in my communication that hadn't been there before. I had spent years being accommodating, absorbing extra work, and smoothing over conflicts to keep everyone happy, much as I had done in my family. No more. In our morning staff meeting, I delegated projects I would have previously handled myself, established clearer boundaries around my time, and directly addressed performance issues I had been tiptoeing around. Megan caught my eye across the conference table, a small smile playing at her lips. She had seen the change coming before anyone else. "Is everything okay, Ms. Wells?" asked Jason, one of the senior account managers who had grown accustomed to my taking on his overflow work. "Everything is excellent, Jason. And please, call me Jessica." I met his gaze directly. "I'm restructuring our workflow to be more efficient and equitable. You'll find the new guidelines in your email." After the meeting, Megan followed me into my office, closing the door behind her. "So, how did it go in New York?" "Exactly as planned." I handed her a small gift box. "A token of my appreciation for your help. I couldn't have done it without you." She opened it to find a pair of elegant silver earrings I'd picked up in New York. "These are beautiful, but you didn't have to." "I wanted to." "You went above and beyond, Megan. You showed me what real loyalty looks like." Her expression softened. "After working with you for 3 years, I've seen how you put everyone else first, your clients, your team, your family. It was about time someone put you first." That afternoon, our CEO, Michael Donovan, stopped by my office unannounced. "Jessica, do you have a minute?" "Of course." I gestured to the chair across from my desk, wondering what had prompted this unexpected visit. "I've been reviewing the quarterly reports, and your division's numbers are impressive." "More than impressive, they're the best in the company." He leaned forward. "I'm also hearing that you've implemented some changes to your team's workflow." I nodded, suddenly wary. Had someone complained about my new approach? "I have. I believe the changes will improve our efficiency and output." "I agree." He smiled. "Which is why I wanted to discuss a new opportunity with you. Our chief operating officer is retiring at the end of the quarter, and I'd like you to consider taking the position." I stared at him, momentarily speechless. COO was several levels above my current position and typically went to executives with decades more experience. "I'm honored, but I'm surprised. There must be other candidates with more seniority." "Seniority isn't everything. You have a unique combination of analytical skills, creativity, and leadership ability. You've consistently delivered results while developing your team's talents." He paused. "Frankly, you should have been promoted years ago, but you seemed content in your current role." Had I seemed content? Or had I simply never advocated for myself, never pushed for recognition, always waiting for someone to notice my contributions just as I had with my family? "I'm not content anymore," I said firmly. "I'm interested in the position, but I'd like to discuss the scope, compensation, and support structure before making a decision." Michael looked surprised, then pleased. "Of course. I'll have HR prepare a formal offer, and we can meet again later this week to discuss details." After he left, I sat back in my chair, processing what had just happened. A promotion that would normally take years of political maneuvering had just been offered to me, largely because I had finally started advocating for myself instead of waiting to be noticed. That evening, I received an email from my father. The subject line simply read payment confirmation. The body contained proof of a wire transfer for the full amount they owed me, completed weeks ahead of the deadline established in our agreement. There was no accompanying message, no apology, no attempt to explain or justify their actions. Just cold financial compliance. I forwarded the confirmation to Sarah, then closed my laptop and poured myself a glass of wine. As I looked out over the Boston skyline from my apartment window, I realized I felt neither vindication nor satisfaction from their payment. What I felt was liberation, freedom from the emotional and financial entanglement that had defined our relationship for so long. My phone chimed with a text from Amber. Had my first job interview today. Used those tips you sent. They asked me back for a second round. I smiled despite myself. True to my word, I had sent her resources on resume building and interviewing techniques, along with honest feedback on her initial drafts. Her transformation was just beginning, but she was showing a determination I hadn't seen in her before. Congratulations, I texted back. Remember to research the company and prepare questions to ask them. Already on it. Thank you, Jess. For everything. Over the next few months, life took on a new rhythm. I negotiated a compensation package for the COO position that reflected my true value to the company. I established clear boundaries with my parents, limiting our communication to brief, factual exchanges. And I began building a different kind of relationship with Amber, one based on mutual respect rather than competition or resentment. She found a job at a small marketing agency, ironically, in the same field as me but starting at an entry-level position. She moved to a more affordable apartment, sold her designer clothes and bags to cover expenses during her transition, and for the first time in her life, experienced the satisfaction of earning her own way. It's weird, she told me during one of our monthly video calls. I actually feel better about myself buying a $20 shirt with money I earned than I ever did wearing those $500 outfits Mom and Dad bought me. As for my parents, they made several attempts to restore our previous dynamic. My mother sent birthday and holiday gifts I returned unopened. My father called with investment opportunities I declined to discuss. Eventually, they seemed to accept that the daughter who had always accommodated their needs and demands no longer existed. 6 months after the confrontation in New York, I received a handwritten letter from my mother. Unlike their previous attempts at contact, this one contained something new: accountability. I've been seeing a therapist, she wrote. She's helping me understand how our treatment of you and Amber affected you both. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know that I recognize the harm we caused. Your father isn't ready to have this conversation yet, but I hope someday he will be. Until then, I respect your boundaries and am working to become someone worthy of being in your life again. I didn't respond immediately, unsure if this represented genuine change or was simply a new tactic to regain access to my life. Time would tell, and for once, I was in no rush to make decisions based on others' timelines or needs. 1 year to the day after the cancelled birthday dinner that had set everything in motion, I stood in the private dining room of the same upscale Boston restaurant where I had originally made reservations. This time, however, I wasn't celebrating with my family of origin but with the family I had chosen, friends, colleagues, and yes, Amber, who had earned an invitation through consistent effort to rebuild our relationship. Megan, now my chief of staff in my role as COO, had helped organize the evening, ensuring every detail was perfect. As I looked around at the gathering, my team members who had flourished under my more assertive leadership, friends who had supported me through the transformation, even Sarah Martinez who had become both a professional ally and personal friend, I felt a sense of belonging I had never experienced with my biological family. Attention, everyone, Megan called, tapping her glass. I'd like to propose a toast to Jessica, not just for her professional achievements this year, which have been remarkable, but for showing all of us what it means to value yourself and demand that others do the same. Glasses raised around the room as murmurs of agreement rippled through the gathering. To Jessica, they chorused. As the evening progressed, Amber pulled me aside. I have something for you. She handed me a small, carefully wrapped package. It's not much, but... Inside was a framed photograph I had never seen before, Amber and me as children, maybe 7 and 4 years old, sitting on a beach building a sandcastle together. We were looking at each other, laughing, captured in a rare moment of genuine connection before our parents' differential treatment had created the chasm between us. Where did you find this? I asked, oddly moved by the image. In Mom's old albums. I thought you should have it. She hesitated. I know things will never be the same with them, but I'm grateful we found our way back to each other. I hugged her, this sister who was becoming a friend in a way I'd never thought possible. Me too. Later that night, after the guests had departed, I received an unexpected call from the lobby. Ms. Wells, there's a delivery for you. Downstairs, the desk attendant handed me a simple white envelope. Inside was a birthday card signed by my parents, with a brief note, "We respect your boundaries and understand why they exist. We hope someday to earn back your trust. Until then, we wish you happiness on your birthday." No manipulation, no demands, no attempts to downplay what they had done, just a simple acknowledgement of reality and respect for the boundaries I had established. I slipped the card back into the envelope, neither accepting nor rejecting it, but recognizing it as a small step in what would be a very long journey if they truly wanted to repair our relationship. Back in my apartment, I opened my laptop to find an email from Michael Donovan with the subject line "Quarterly Results." Our division had not only met but exceeded all projections, solidifying my position in the company's leadership. The board had approved my proposal for a new initiative that would expand our market reach while creating advancement opportunities for team members who had previously been overlooked. As I prepared for bed, I caught my reflection in the mirror and paused, really seeing myself perhaps for the first time. The woman looking back at me stood taller, her eyes clearer, her expression more confident than the person who had existed a year ago. That woman had defined herself by what she could do for others, her value measured in sacrifice and utility. This woman defined herself by her own standards, her worth inherent and non-negotiable. The journey hadn't been easy. Confronting decades of family dysfunction, standing up to manipulation, and rebuilding my identity outside of the responsible one role had required courage I hadn't known I possessed. There had been moments of doubt, of grief for the family relationship I had thought I had, of fear that I was overreacting or being too harsh. But as I reflected on where I was now compared to a year ago, professionally ascendant, financially secure, surrounded by genuine relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation, I knew I had made the right choices. My family's betrayal had been painful, but it had also been the catalyst for my transformation. Without that cancelled birthday dinner, without discovering their lies, I might have continued indefinitely in patterns that diminished me. Sometimes the greatest gift is the painful truth that forces you to reckon with reality and rebuild on a more solid foundation. As I drifted toward sleep, I realized that while the past year had been about standing up for myself against those who had taken advantage of me, the coming year would be about something even more important, living fully as this new version of myself, exploring possibilities that had previously been unimaginable when I was constrained by others' expectations and my own limiting beliefs. The story of Jessica Wells, the real story, not the role I had been assigned in my family's narrative, was just beginning. And for the first time in my life, I was the one holding the pen. Hey YouTube family, this journey of discovering my true worth and finding the courage to stand up for myself completely changed my life. Have you ever experienced a moment when family betrayal actually led to personal growth? Or have you had to establish boundaries with toxic family members? Your experiences matter to this community, so please share them in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more authentic conversations about family dynamics, personal growth, and finding your voice. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to prioritize your own well-being and set boundaries, even with family. Thank you so much for being part of this supportive community. Remember that sometimes the most painful experiences can lead to the most profound transformation. Until next time, this is Jessica, wishing you the courage to write your own story.